I am here to get into Magnolia, which is directed by Paul Thomas Anderson, released in the year 1999. And it's just a wonderfully perfect kind of chaotic sort of atmosphere from start to finish that Paul Thomas Anderson conveys as it just involves just numerous different stories as they just look at perspective in Los Angeles as characters are loosely spiritually connected. And the characters of screenplays, it's just downright groundbreaking from start to finish. I mean, this is what turns out this is just very much like a 90s take variation on a lot of Emor Bergman's influence. And it reminds me particularly just of like a foreshadow to a lot of the passion behind 21st century filmmaking and almost the excellent way to go mad, as I think the director Alejandro Gonzalez Iñárritu perfectly almost kind of seems like a walking force of a filmography of like that seems like a student of what this project is doing. And it just explores a lot of like melancholic moments in characters within like very intense situations, but it has like a bit of a unique sort of warmth and passion behind a lot of it. And this is a unique perspective from P.T. Anderson. You could say perhaps is to this day his most ambitious project. This is him in a uniquely ambitious kind of mood, which is very interesting to like kind of chart how at the time he considered this to be his best project, but now he considers it a little exhausting next to I think everything he's made in the 21st century practically. He would have trimmed it down, he says, but it's like as a viewer, it's like I just have to disagree, but just because the influence is so significantly strong. And I've also heard a lot of discussion about how like films like Boogie Nights and this have a lot of youthful exuberance, particularly. And I think I've actually needed all my 20s to acquire to what that means. And perhaps I found throughout my 30s that it means that there is like a naivete, like perhaps it's looking at tragedy, the beauty of naivete, but like you can easily fall for a lot of this stuff. And it's like I think just like exploring more films, like always going back to this stuff. It still feels fresh, and it always washes over as like something new every single time. Also, feels very influenced by just like a lot of Robert Altman as well, and I mean, it's just some of the greatest characters, absolutely right here. I mean, my absolute favorites would have to hold up as Tom Cruise, Philip Seymour Hoffman, and John C. Reilly. All of them are fantastic here from start to finish, just completely layered and very fully realized and well developed, and it's just passionate. Really made from start to finish. It's a very original variation on a formula that reminds me of quite a bit of the Shortcuts, where it's 3 hours and it's just kind of an epic LA exploration, but it's a completely different mood piece. This is like a lot more of a warm-hearted, fast-paced, kind of hyper-eyed kind of depiction, which is, again, it turns out very Bergman influenced. Like it's like P.T. Anderson's take on a Bergman variation, and it's kind of like also P.T. Anderson's kind of rebellion against a lot of the overbearing nihilism throughout a lot of the 90s. I think P.T. Anderson was on a more positive outlook on life, and this is his kind of like raw and gritty way of getting across an ultimate sense of dark optimism, which I believe that lives in every P.T. Anderson project. He's a bit of a dark optimist, and this is a perfect emotional note from start to finish, as it's just an ultimate epic from start to finish, and it's just completely unhinged, and it's kind of rawness. It's a uniquely raw mood that P.T. Anderson. Like from here, I think he was just literally more subtle. From like even this feels subtle though to me. Like it's like this is just a very youthful exuberance about behind all this, and Boogie Nights I imagine as well, and this is just unique at exploring almost the value and beauty of having something of a naivete in perceiving filmmaking in general, like in art in general. I think like I see this as like kind of a bit of a comfort blanket. I've watched this many times, like growing up, just in similar days where I was just like falling in love with like REM when I was like 17. I just remember like just feeling like completely transcended, like just by the fact that this art kind of even exists. And I feel like this is told that it's some of the most like spiritually rewarding. Hold Up is like a film. Every time I rewatch it, it's like, wow, I needed this more than I ever could have realized. It's just completely perfect from start to finish. It's a 3-hour runtime, and it's a perfect kind of conclusion to the 90s, and it seems very influenced also by like a lot of like Quentin Tarantino happening also. This and it's kind of raw energy. It's very fast. It's kind of got a like very slow paced way of directing, like some fast paced moments all throughout. And this, I just love the behind the scenes making process of all this too, because it's very fascinating just how P.T. Anderson was on a unique level of crazy, but I think this is like the good-hearted crazy that's good for a creator to just go all the way into a product. I think the passion lives up. Time Says a Flame. Looking at a bit of a conclusion of like 20th century value moving to the 21st century, as I imagine P.T. Anderson was intimidated by in his own ways. He seems like he really was particularly rich about his perspective on 20th century value throughout his whole life. So this is like a particularly unique mood for P.T. Anderson in a lot of ways. A lot more raw, a lot more unhinged than ever before or since, really. I would just say like just how close up it is on a bunch of characters, and honestly, this is one of those ones I could just like. It's so good that it could be longer and it would be fine, as far as I'm concerned. But I think it's perfect the way it is. Um, it's like a lot more of a youthful exuberance about it than Robert Altman would have. I think that's a difference between this and a Robert Altman project. Although it's like very similar kind of layout. It's like what makes it stand out is I think it's just always very. You could just say kind of got a very like warm-hearted way about it. Altman could be a little more cold, and this is just, but it's like I believe in equally importance in both values of that in filmmaking. But this is just a completely original moment in D.T. Anderson's filmography. Perhaps just larger than life, biggest, and this is just perfect filmmaking from start to finish.